Okay, so I've been doing custom cakes out of my home kitchen for about 4 years now. It started as a hobby after my daughter was born, because I needed something that was mine, something that wasn't diapers and feeding schedules. I took a few online courses, watched approximately 10,000 YouTube tutorials, and slowly built up a clientele through word of mouth and Instagram. By the time this whole situation happened, I had a wait list of about 6 weeks and was charging real prices for real work. Not Walmart cake prices, not grocery store prices. Custom, hand decorated, fondant, and buttercream, the whole deal. My name is Danny, I'm 31, and I say all of this not to brag, but because it matters for context. I'm not a hobbyist selling cupcakes out of a Tupperware container. This is legitimate work that I take seriously. And it is and seeds. So let me tell you about Melissa. And Melissa came to me through a mutual acquaintance, my neighbor Becca, who I genuinely like, and who has ordered from me twice before without incident. Becca mentioned to Melissa that I did cakes. Melissa slid into my Instagram DMs in early March, and that's where it all began. From the very first message she sent, there were signs. I've learned to read those signs now. Back then, I was still giving people the benefit of the doubt. She opened with, "Hey, Becca told me about your cakes. So cute. How much do you charge?" Which, fine, normal question. I told her my pricing starts at $85 for a basic 2-tier and goes up depending on complexity, flavors, and design. She came back with, "Oh wow, that seems like a lot for a home baker, LOL." And I just sat with that for a second. I responded politely that my pricing reflects the cost of quality ingredients, the time involved, and the skill level of the work, and that I completely understood if it wasn't within her budget. A normal person would either say okay or go find someone cheaper. Melissa said, No, I'm interested. I just wasn't expecting that price. Let me think about what I want. Yarns and fine. I left the door open. And almost. Over the next 2 weeks, she sent me probably 15 messages describing what she wanted for her daughter's 5th birthday cake. And I want to be specific here because you need to understand the scope of what she was describing. That she wanted a 3-tier cake, serves about 40 people. The theme was Encanto. Her daughter's obsessed. Totally understandable. But she wanted hand-painted details on each tier. Individual sugar flowers, figurines of multiple characters modeled in fondant, a working light inside the cake. Yes, she saw that on TikTok and wanted it. And she wanted it in 3 different flavors across the tiers. She sent me reference photos. The reference photos were from professional bakeries in major cities that charge anywhere from $400 to $800 for comparable work. And I quoted her, 310. And I want you to know that 310 was already me being generous because she'd come through Becca and I wanted to be good to people in my orbit. A fair price for what she was describing was closer to 380, 400. But I said 310 or explaining the breakdown and waited. And she said, "Is there any way to do it for 150? And chatting, "Yeah, you read that right. 150 for a 3-tier custom Encanto cake with painted details, sugar flowers, fondant figurines, a light mechanism, and 3 flavors." I did the math for her. Just the ingredients alone would run me close to $90 for a cake that size with quality materials. That doesn't include the 12-15 hours of labor. I explained this very calmly. I was not rude. I was a professional. She said, "But you're doing it from home, so your overhead is low." I said, "My overhead includes the ingredients, the equipment I've invested in over 4 years, the electricity to run my oven for hours, the packaging, and the delivery if she wanted that. Doing it from home doesn't mean doing it for free." She said, "Other people do it cheaper." I said, "Then I'd encourage you to reach out to them. I genuinely hope you find something that works for your budget." And then, and this is the part that made Becca's eyes go wide when I told her. Melissa said, "Okay, fine, I'll do $200, but I'm doing you a favor because I'll post about it on my Facebook and you'll get more customers." Don and I have 4,200 Instagram followers. I have a 6-week wait list. I did not need Melissa's Facebook audience as a form of currency. I told her, still politely, that I appreciated the thought, but that I couldn't do the cake for $200 given the scope of what she was asking for, and that if she wanted to simplify the design significantly, I could work with a lower budget. She went quiet for a few days. I thought that was the end of it. And it was not the end of it. She came back and said she'd thought about it and wanted to move forward at $310. My original quote. She said she understood now and apologized for being weird about it. I actually appreciated that. People don't always apologize. I booked her in, sent her my standard contract, which includes a 50% non-refundable deposit to hold the date, and waited for her to send the deposit, and around she sent $50. My deposit for a $310 cake is $155. I messaged her and said there seemed to be an error, that the deposit should be $155. She said, "I know, I thought maybe we could split it up, like I'll send more later." I explained again that the deposit isn't a payment plan, it's a hold. It covers my materials cost and reserves the date, so I'm not turning away other clients. She eventually sent the remaining $105 about a week later, after 2 follow-up messages from me. Not a great sign, but okay. We had a deposit. We were moving forward. Dappa, generous. Angie ahat in Austin Aspai spent 2 weeks on prep for this cake. I ordered specific supplies. I made the fondant figurines in advance because they need drying time. I sourced the small LED mechanism she wanted. I tested the flavor combinations. I was all in. And in. The cake was due on a Saturday. The Friday before, at 9:47 p.m., Melissa messaged me and said, "Hey, so I've been thinking, and I feel like 310 is too much. My sister said she knows someone who does cakes and could do the whole thing for 175. I think I'm going to go with her. Can I get my deposit back?" In whispers, pomot. And then I'm going to let you just absorb that for a moment. The cake was due in less than 24 hours. I had already purchased all the specialty materials. I had already made the figurines. I had already done significant prep work, and she wanted her deposit back. No way, and I said no, nicely. I cited the contract she signed, which clearly states the deposit is non-refundable, and explained that the deposit exists precisely for this situation, because I had already incurred costs and turned away other work for her date. NGD Jessic Starps, in one. I don't think I need to tell you that she did not take this well. And she escalated immediately. First, she tried to guilt me. I'm a single mom. I can't afford to just lose $155. I felt for that, genuinely, but that doesn't change the math of my costs. Then she tried to negotiate. What if I pay you $50 and you keep $50 and we call it even? Then she threatened me. I'm going to leave you a 1-star review and tell everyone you scammed me. And there it is. The nuclear option that choosing beggars always think is a secret weapon. Endra, I said, I'm sorry you feel that way. The contract you signed outlines why the deposit is non-refundable. I wish you and your daughter a wonderful birthday party. Gaston. She left a 1-star review on my Facebook page within the hour. The review said, and I'm quoting directly, "Scammer, took my money and never delivered. Do not use. She's unprofessional and rude and overpriced." Becca should be ashamed for recommending her. She also posted about it on what I assume is a local community Facebook group, because I suddenly had 3 comments on my business page from people I didn't know, saying things like, "Thank you for the warning," and "So sorry this happened to you." And okay. So here's where I made a decision. And instead I've heard different advice about how to handle this kind of thing. Some people say respond professionally and move on. Some people say ignore it. I thought about it for about an hour. I talked to my husband Marcus, and I decided on a third option. Enish and I posted every message. Enish not out of rage, not to be dramatic, but because I had a complete documented record of every interaction we'd ever had, starting from "How much do you charge, LOL?" all the way through "I'm doing you a favor, and can I get my deposit back the night before delivery?" I cropped out her last name and her profile photo, but I left her first name, and I posted the entire thread to my Instagram stories with a simple caption. For anyone who sees a review claiming I'm a scammer, here's the full conversation from inquiry to cancellation. Make your own conclusions. I also responded to the Facebook review directly. I said, "Hi Melissa, I'm sorry our experience didn't meet your expectations. For anyone reading, I've documented our full conversation on my Instagram, including the signed contract, the deposit agreement, and the cancellation request, made less than 24 hours before the scheduled delivery date, after significant prep work had already been completed. I wish you well." No, nidam. Then I went to bed. And on. I woke up to 47 DMs. And most of them were from people who had seen either the review or my response or the Instagram stories, and the overwhelming majority were supportive. A few people shared their own stories of dealing with this same type of situation as small business owners. 2 people reached out to book cakes. And then there was a message from someone named Karen. Different Karen, not a meme Karen, an actual woman named Karen, who said she was in the local community group where Melissa had posted, and that the whole group had turned against Melissa after multiple people in the thread started pointing out inconsistencies in her story. Apparently, Melissa had claimed I'd taken her full payment and delivered nothing, and several people in the group started asking questions she couldn't answer. Someone who actually knew her apparently commented that Melissa had a history of this kind of thing with local small businesses. And Becca texted me that morning and said she'd seen everything and felt terrible for sending Melissa my way. I told her it wasn't her fault, and I meant it. Becca's good people. And the 1-star review stayed up for about 3 days before Facebook removed it, presumably because it violated their policy against reviews for services the person never actually received. I reported it with documentation the same night she posted it, and I honestly didn't expect much, but it worked. And I finished the figurines I'd made for her cake, modified the design slightly, and offered it to a client on my waitlist whose birthday cake order I'd had to push back due to timing. She paid full price, loved it, and posted about it with a tag that got me about 200 new Instagram followers over the following week. And Melissa never contacted me again. Yander stars. Yan update ear. And okay. So I posted the original version of this story about 3 weeks after it happened, and I've gotten enough questions and comments that I wanted to come back and fill in what I know now. And first, Becca filled me in on some background I hadn't known. Apparently, Melissa had done similar things to two other people in our general social circle. A woman who does custom wreaths and another woman who sews custom children's clothing. Both of them had Melissa inquire. Both of them had the whole bargaining and guilting routine. And in one case, Melissa had actually received the product and then disputed the charge through PayPal, claiming it wasn't as described. The wreath woman lost that dispute and never got paid. So this wasn't a one-time misunderstanding. This was a pattern. Earned in Neshner Enmer. And second, someone found my Instagram post and shared it in that same local community group where Melissa had originally complained about me. I didn't do this myself, I want to be clear. I don't know who shared it, but according to Karen, my inside source in that group, bless her, the thread got very long and very messy, and at some point Melissa deleted her original post. Karen said the general consensus in the group had shifted pretty firmly to this baker did nothing wrong, and a few people even posted saying they'd ordered from me or were planning to. And third, and this is the part I genuinely did not expect, the sister who supposedly knew someone who could do the whole cake for 175s, apparently she either doesn't exist or that baker canceled, because Melissa posted in a different local group asking for a last-minute cake recommendation the morning of the party. I only know this because someone screenshotted it and sent it to me. The post said she needed a cake for that afternoon. No specifics about what kind, just desperate. I don't know if she found something or if her daughter's party ended up with a store cake. I'd like to say I felt bad about that. I didn't. I felt like the contract had done exactly what contracts are supposed to do. And in fourth, my wait list is now 8 weeks. I raised my base price to $95. I updated my contract to include an explicit clause about cancellations within 72 hours of delivery, which voids any possibility of even partial refund. My lawyer friend Tasha looked it over and said, it's solid. I've started requiring payment in full, not just deposit, 1 week before delivery for any order over 250s. These are all things I probably should have had in place already, but you know how it is. You learn as you go. And I also want to say something about the whole experience that I've been thinking about. There's this thing that choosing beggars do where they weaponize your decency against you. They assume that if they push hard enough, appeal to emotion enough, threaten enough, you'll cave, because keeping the peace feels easier than holding the line. Melissa's whole strategy from the opening, that seems like a lot LOL to the last-minute cancellation demand, was built on the assumption that I would eventually find her comfort more important than my own livelihood. And the thing is, in the past, I might have. I've absolutely knocked money off quotes to avoid conflict. I've held my tongue when clients push back on pricing because I didn't want to seem difficult. This time I just didn't. I held the line, I documented everything, and when she tried to burn me, I had receipts. And Esten Becca came over for coffee a couple weeks after everything settled and said something that stuck with me. She said, you know, she probably does this because it works on people. You're just the first one who made it not work. And I think that's probably true. And I've had a handful of people in my DMs call me petty for posting the conversation, say I should have taken the high road, that it wasn't worth it, that I just made drama. And maybe they're right that there was a more dignified option. But I've also had 6 small business owners reach out to tell me they've updated their own contracts or cancellation policies because of what I shared. So I'll live with being a little petty. And my daughter just turned 4. I made her an Encanto cake. Full 3 tiers, painted details, sugar flowers, the works. And I didn't charge her a single cent. It was the best cake I've ever made, and nobody can put a price on it. And so I guess I want to ask you this. When someone tries to use your reputation as a hostage, threatening reviews, social media call-outs, all of it, do you think the right move is to take the high road and stay quiet, or do you post the receipts? Because I genuinely think there's an argument for both, and I'm curious where you all land on that. Let me know in the comments.